Everyone, this is Dr. Clark in the Center for Weight Loss Success, and tonight on Losing Weight USA, we're going to talk a little bit about fasting. I think we may have talked about this about early in the year, but I probably put a little update on this. And I've become convinced as time goes on that intermittent fasting actually can have some tremendous health benefits. It can actually help in a weight loss plan. And we'll go over some of those details there, kind of a refresher course on here. I did do a series of videos on, I think it's on our Facebook site as well as our YouTube site. So if you're interested in more information, you can pick up on those. And then as time goes on, I think we'll probably update some of those things because, again, it's becoming more, the more we learn about fasting, I think it actually can have some tremendous health benefits, as well as it can actually work incredibly well for weight loss, as well as breaking through weight loss plateaus too. All right, well, before we dive in here, let's give her the official welcome, welcome Losing Weight USA. This is answers to your weight loss questions, some of the latest updates on weight loss research, as well as a little bit of expert advice. It gives you access not only to me, but you should be receiving the health tips and recipes via the membership portal. Each webinar is going to last about a half hour or so. If you have questions, just type them into that chat box during the discussion. We'll get to them at the end as time permits, and typically we'll make time permit. If you think of something once we're all done, just give us a yell here at the Center for Weight Loss Success. The email is success@cfws.com. Phone number 757-873-1880. All right, so I'm going to flip these slides over here. Go. All right, so today again we're talking about fasting, sometimes called intermittent fasting. Intermittent just means you're doing it intermittently, every once in a while. So when we think about it, fasting really is just a pattern of eating. That's all it is. And reality is we all fast. If you're not eating, technically you're fasting. So, and literally every night we go to sleep, we're not eating, and between meals, we're not eating. And so what we're really talking about is, do we just extend the period of not eating? And if you also think about it, this isn't something new. Okay, well, it's been around forever because we all have to fast. We all have to sleep. We're not eating continuously. If we couldn't survive fasting, we couldn't survive at all. So you have to be able to fast in order to survive, or else we'd have to continuously eat. So fasting reality is just a pattern of eating. Okay? So it's been around forever, but it was much more common, thousands of years ago. Okay, thousands of years ago, food was very scarce. And so people were forced to fast. Food wasn't readily available, so therefore they had to wait, they had to find food, so there was times of feasting and fasting there. So now that's not so pertinent so much. So now not so much. We don't have to worry about, we know where our next meal is coming from. We can just run out the door, pick it up at the next restaurant right around the corner, the grocery store is right around the corner. So reality is that pattern of eating hasn't been forced on us so much. So now it's becoming a little bit more, is this something that can actually be beneficial to us for not just weight, but also potentially other health problems? So is this just a form of a fad diet? Is kind of skipping meals, if you want to call it that. So this is a form of a fad diet, or are there any real health benefits that could potentially help with weight loss? Now, I want to make a significant distinction, kind of fasting versus starvation, okay? We often state, and I say it all the time, starvation is not a good weight loss plan. Okay? And that's very true. Starvation is not a good weight loss plan. Fasting, though, is not starvation. If you think about it, starvation is something that's forced upon us in that we don't know where our next meal is coming from. We don't know if there will be a next meal. So starvation is a whole different kind of mental mindset setup as opposed to fasting. Fasting is something we choose to do. It's something we choose to do. And so the mindset is completely different. If the mindset is completely different, typically that also means some of the hormonal changes that occur will also be different. Starvation is a high stress situation. Fasting is probably the opposite of that. Now, it began to come in vogue or back into vogue in the 1960s. Again, it used to be, years and years and years ago, it was very common. People fasted all the time, because food wasn't readily available. So, but it came back into vogue in the 1960s. And one of the best examples of that is 1965. There was a 27-year-old Scotsman, weighed 456 pounds. He's a big boy. Okay. So 456 pounds. He saw his doctor who suggested that, when he had asked him, when the gentleman had asked his doctor, I think I'm trying to lose a few pounds. I'd like to lose a few pounds. What can I do? And the doctor suggests, well, maybe you shouldn't eat for a few days. It's kind of offhand. And so he didn't. He didn't for 382 days. So the world record fasting is 382 days. And it was a fast that was very carefully monitored. So basically, he lost a tremendous amount of weight. He lost 276 pounds, and it was then very stable. He drank only water, took his vitamins, and a little bit of kind of extra sodium, potassium, some extra minerals, basically, to try to keep everything in balance there, his electrolytes in balance. So, and he was monitored, so he kept checking with a physician. And then when he finally broke his fast, so literally over a year, he fasted, and he did wonderfully. After he broke his fast, then he only regained 16 pounds in the next 5 years. So literally, it can work. So the world record of fasting is 382 days. So that's the documented one. And so what we're talking about now then is, somewhere between an overnight fast, which we all do, to 382 days, which we don't all do. And it's not that I'm going to suggest that you fast for 382 days. But the point there being is that it actually can be done fairly safely. And as much as we'd like to think about, skipping meals is bad and things like that, maybe that actually needs to get rethought, and because there are some things that occur that potentially can help with overall health and weight loss. All right, now, one of the first things people often wonder, so isn't fasting isn't it just calorie restriction? We're going from whatever we were eating to zero. Okay? But it isn't. There's more to it than that. And this is a big difference. Now, often when we cut back on calories, a very common phenomenon, pretty much anybody who's been on a weight loss plan can probably tell us that. They kind of live this, is that when we just cut back on calories, what will tend to happen is your body will actually slow your metabolism down so that you don't lose as much weight as you would think you would. So part of the problem of just cutting back is that your body adjusts by just slowing your metabolism down. Well, it also does it the other way too. So if we were to overeat for a period of time, actually your body will speed its metabolism up too. And so your body is very good at kind of regulating that. Kind of depending on what you're in, we kind of have this thermostat or kind of set point, if you want to say, that sometimes it seems like, hey, we don't actually lose nearly as much weight, but also the opposite may be true too, that sometimes we don't gain as much weight if we're overeating. So isn't this calorie restriction? That's all it is. Well, that's not actually true, because when you actually go from eating normally to 0 calories, that's a much different situation than just cutting back on calories. Because what we find is that when we look at this fairly carefully, is that when we go down to basically 0 calories, growth hormone goes way up. So the secretion of growth hormone increases during fasting. And growth hormone is a fat-burning hormone. It basically boosts your metabolism up. And there are some studies, and relatively shorter term studies, that initially when people start fasting, their metabolism actually goes higher than normal. And this growth hormone goes way up. In 24-hour fast, and this is done in fairly young people, which can change their growth hormone fairly easily. So as we get older, we can't change growth hormone quite as easily. But no matter what, growth hormone increased significantly, over 100% in females and 200% in males. And when this was with just a single 24-hour fast, kind of, okay, I ate and then fasted for 24 hours. They checked their growth hormone levels, because growth hormone is normally kind of secreted in the middle of the night, kind of when we're deep in sleep. It's kind of a pulsatile secretion of that. But when we fast, actually, your body starts secreting it much more frequently. And subsequently, then it actually does boost your metabolism up. And part of it is because it does help actually with mobilizing fat. And if you haven't eaten, you do want to kind of mobilize fat. So this is occurring. And for some reason, we lost my. Let me try that again over here. All right, we're back there on the slides. All right, so growth hormone actually goes up significantly. Growth hormone will help you lose weight. It can actually boost metabolism. It helps you preserve lean body mass. But the other things that occur when you're fasting, insulin levels go way down, and insulin then inhibits fat burning. So if insulin levels are high, this is what we talk about all the time, low carb diets, you want to manipulate insulin levels down. But literally, fasting is a low carb diet. So in a low carb diet, we basically take in no calories. Subsequently, insulin levels plummet way down. Reality is, I know I oversimplify this a lot of times. I often say that, gee, it's the carbohydrate that stimulates insulin going up. But reality is, anything we eat will stimulate insulin to go up somewhat. Carbohydrate does it the most. Protein can also do it. Fat does it very minimally so. Right? But literally anything we eat can make insulin levels rise. And insulin is truly the hormone that inhibits fat burning. So fasting decreases insulin the best. The other thing it does is it actually improves insulin sensitivity. We talk about carbohydrate sensitivity, insulin resistance. So if you have insulin resistance, what you want to do is improve your insulin sensitivity. And fasting actually helps do that. Fasting also increases some of the catecholamines. Catecholamines are epinephrine, norepinephrine, which are, the layman's term is adrenaline, noradrenaline. And these things kind of something that one helps boost metabolism up for that short period of time, but it also, epinephrine, norepinephrine are going to activate hormone-sensitive lipase. Hormone-sensitive lipase helps you mobilize fat. So this is more than just calorie restriction. There's more to it than that. As again, with calorie restriction, sometimes we see that, hey, metabolism actually slows. With fasting, you actually can see metabolism increase. And this was something that wasn't really appreciated. Okay, and this is just coming about some of these studies that have been done are just kind of starting to pop up here and there that, hey, it may not be quite as bad. We used to say skipping meals was always bad. So a recent review showed fasting and calorie restriction can both help with decreasing body weight. Not only body weight, but also getting rid of fat. But what they found is that the ones that were fasting were more effective in retaining lean body mass. And what this study did, basically it took people and one group of people, and what they did is just cut their calories back. They cut their calories back, and therefore, yes, they lost weight. For the other group of people, they basically cut the calories back, but in a different fashion. What they had is they would fast intermittently. So one day they have kind of fairly normal, even extra calories. Next day they fasted. They did it kind of every other day. And so subsequently the calories total in both groups were the same. But they found that, so both of them lost weight. But they found that the ones that are actually intermittent fasting, they had retention of lean body mass much better. And subsequently then would preserve their metabolism. So overall, it decreases calories. It is a way to decrease calories. It will potentially increase fat burning while preserving lean body mass. And literally, it is tolerable. A lot of times we think about, gee, I could never do that. But reality, it is tolerable. It's been proven it can be done for 382 days. And reality is we do it every night. So maybe we just ought to extend that. Now, there are other potential health benefits, okay? And I like to throw these little quotes out of here every once in a while. So a natural response to illness is often fasting. When we get ill, we don't typically want to eat. Okay? Hippocrates, one of the greatest physicians back in 300 BC, okay, to eat when you are sick is to feed your illness. Plutarch also met some of that same time period. Instead of using medicine, fast a day. Physicians realized back long ages ago that fasting, there is some health benefits to it. So what other health benefits can you have? There's some significant potential decrease in cancer risk. Now, they've been shown in animals, but they're also been kind of potentially seeing this in humans too. In animals, rats specifically with breast cancer, they studied this. Fasted rats lived much longer than unfasted rats when they have a way to produce breast cancer in rats. And so when they fasted the rats, they actually lived longer. So fasting seems to protect normal cells and somewhat starves cancer cells. And that's the theory on there. Are a number of physicians out there that actually recommend intermittent fasting as a cancer prevention thing. The thought process there is this. A lot of cancers, their energy source in order for cancers to grow, their energy source typically is going to be glucose. Okay? So if we take basically, and the cancer cells are kind of, they're abnormal cells to begin with. They're growing like crazy, but they're potentially then, if we do something to them, we can kill the abnormal cells and survive our normal cells. And that's the whole point of chemotherapy. Okay? And so is there another way of doing that? If we take the food away from the cancer cells, now obviously it takes the food away from the healthy cells too, but our healthy cells actually can tolerate it much better. And so for a cancer to grow, it needs the energy source. And if we take it away, it kind of starves it. And subsequently, some of the cancer cells can die off. And so as a cancer prevention, we think about cancers kind of starting as kind of one cell. And then it may take years and years. So even if we found something, or if we could prevent that one cell from dividing and getting into, making a lump of whatever kind, it potentially could decrease risk of cancer. And so that's not like that's craziness. Like, no, this actually is, there is some sense to that. Longevity, meaning anti-aging. Anti-aging, fasted mice live a lot longer than fed mice. Fasted mice live almost twice as long. So when they had fasted mice, what they did was just feed them every other day in a much smaller amount. They feed them every other day. And so subsequently, they fed them every other day, but they actually gave them the same calories. It's just that each day, and so they got double calories the other day. Okay? Most of the time, they wouldn't necessarily eat it all. Okay? But fasted mice lived about twice as long. And what we're looking at there is acute stress versus chronic stress. Acute stress hormones help us. There's some survival benefits there. And they tend to work much better than chronic stress. We think of kind of chronic stress as being unhealthy, and that's very true. High cortisol levels, that's our stress hormone. So if we're stressed and we're not sleeping well, we're stressed at work, we have chronic stress, typically it's much harder to lose weight, and it actually is a health deterrent, okay? So it kind of breaks down our good health. Now, what we're talking about with a fasting then is not chronic stress. It's actually taking acute stress hormones. And acute stress hormones, there are some real health benefits to. What about brain health? Okay, brain health, there is things that can occur. Fasting boosts neuronal Autophagy. Autophagy means that we're eating, kind of the cells are kind of self-eating. So what it does is breaks down, what we're talking about here is that some of the old decrepit cells that are in there, they get broken down so that the new ones can actually regenerate. Okay? That's what it's doing. So it's not a bad thing. And we're kind of neuronal autophagy. Basically, we're kind of breaking down some of the old cells and can rebuild them. It increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, which helps regulate memory, learning, cognitive function. And it also then increases ketones. Because if we're fasting, we're going to be breaking down fat for our energy source. And ketones come from fat. Ketones then are an energy source. The beta-hydroxybutyrate is one of the ketones. And it actually is neuroprotective. It protects our brain, it protects our nerves. So subsequently then, yes, there is some other health benefits. Now, people often wonder about, could I actually exercise while I'm fasting? And we think about kind of you need to eat protein around your exercise and things like that to improve the exercise benefits. So could fasting possibly help? Now, one recommendation I do make is that don't even consider fasting and training if you're not going to hydrate real well and you're not going to sleep well and you're not going to take the time to get somewhat fat adapted, meaning it works much better on a low carbohydrate diet. But the bottom line there is good evidence that those, especially athletes that live in ketosis, meaning they're on very low carb diets, may do intermittent fasting, they actually perform better. But you actually have to live that way. It can't be that, the day before my marathon, I'm going to go run, that all of a sudden I'm going to say, well, I'm going to do a low carb, I'm not going to eat very much. No, you'll bonk, so to speak. So most people don't live that way. But if you did, you'd actually find that you may actually perform better. Now, how's that work with actual training? When truly fasting, you're having 0 calories, can you actually train? Well, there is some adaptation that occurs when we train under not ideal circumstances. And fasting would be a non-ideal circumstance, and having any calories. So if you're forcing yourself to train in a less optimal state, you may actually boost performance down the line. Maybe not right at that time that you're training, because the training may be even harder for you, but it can actually potentially boost performance down the line if you actually train in kind of these less optimal states. Now, lots of different ways to fast. Literally, I mentioned earlier, it's from skipping a meal to 382 days, the world record. So lots of different ways to do this. Now, realize that there are lots of different ways, but you actually have to do it to get the health benefits. So implementation is absolutely key. It's the only way that any of these theoretical benefits are going to help you. Again, extended fasting is possible. Now, I'm not necessarily recommending extended fasting, but there are people that do, and I'm not convinced that it's a bad thing. Okay? Because typically, I think taking acute stress hormones can be beneficial. Chronic stress hormones typically are not. So if we can take advantage of these acute stress hormones, which are typically in that first couple of days, longer than that, you start wondering, okay, how much of the chronic stress is then coming in, which then tends to work against you. Now, having said that, there is some decent evidence that actually extended fast will work. And reality is that, people often wonder, is this diet plan going to work for me? Whatever diet we're talking about. It would be low fat, low carb, Atkins, Mediterranean, whatever. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. People often wonder, gee, this diet, will it work for me or not? Well, there's no doubt that fasting will work. It just depends on how long you're going to do it. Okay, so there isn't any doubt that it'll work. It's going to work better for certain individuals. Certain time frames may work better for certain people. How long one individual does it works better than another way of doing it. So for any individual, it's kind of figuring out what's the right pattern. How long to do each fast, how often to do that. Okay. So, but literally, It can be done indefinitely, and it will work. There's no doubt about it. So a couple of rules apply if you're going to, no matter what method you're talking about as far as intermittent fasting, you do need to get quality sleep. Sleep counts as fasting hours. So if you kind of work with that, gee, I'm going to, part of your day is fasting. Therefore, your night is fasting. And then you want to make sure you're eating quality food. So eat well. If you don't, no method of fasting is really going to be helpful besides, okay, you've cut your calories back. So you need to eat healthy. And I also will definitely recommend that it's fast. So some common methods of intermittent fasting then. If there's a 16-8, basically lean gains, it's referred to as 16-8. What you're doing is you're fasting for 16 hours a day and then just eating during an 8-hour window. And you can make that window as wide or as narrow as you want, from literally just skipping breakfast, and that's kind of a 12-12 almost, or you could do it like 20 and 4 and just kind of narrow the window down. Because what we find is that when we narrow the window of our eating period, is that we typically eat less. Okay? You'd think that, gee, you'd eat a lot more, but you actually don't. And once you get used to doing that, you'll find you'll eat fairly normally. And if you're eating healthy, you'll actually eat less than you were previously. All right. I'm going to kind of skip through some of these things. I see we're kind of running a little bit later than I thought. Okay. Eat, stop, eat is basically 1 or 2 times a week is that you don't eat for 24 hours. Okay, so you eat kind of 1 meal a day for that 24 hours. And the next day you may eat normally. Okay? And then another time during the week, you just have 1 meal a day. Okay? And you kind of pick when that time is and you fast for that whole 24 hours, or basically almost 24 hours, and have a normal size meal. Okay? 5-2 is kind of looking at, okay, you're fasting 2 days out of the week. You're eating normally the other 5 days. And this one's not actually a true fast, because you may actually, for some people, may have a couple hundred calories there. A good way to do this, if that's a good day, if you're going to do that, is kind of use like a couple of protein shakes. And so you have 2 days of using a few protein shakes. The other days you're eating fairly normally. And it's a way to cut back significantly, and it's only 2 days, and you can do anything for a day. Okay. Feast then fast basically has they truly eat 1 meal a day, and that's all they do. Okay, so they have a large meal typically in the early evening, and they fast the remainder 24 hours. And they just get used to doing that. Alternate day, which is often used in research, where it's okay, you'll eat normally one day and then you don't eat the next, okay, which is about a 36-hour fast, or between 30 and 36 hours, depending on your eating pattern. And they do this sometimes just 1 to 2 times a week. All right. Now, questions always come up on this, and so I throw some questions out here that are very common. So questions on intermittent fasting. Won't you just lose lean body mass? Certainly this works best. And the short answer is no, as long as kind of you're in that acute phase. Acute stress is actually typically you don't lose a lot of lean body mass. And actually, when they look at this fairly carefully, metabolism may actually go up a little bit, and fat burning actually goes up, and burning fat is the energy source. Exercising during a fast, is that something you should do? Well, it really depends on your response. Light exercise would be better. You don't want to push it too hard, especially if you're adjusting to it. But again, this is something that if you practice doing it, you'll get better at it. You do want to stay active, because the reality is when we're slugs, we tend to dwell on food. So you want to stay active. Maybe not through some really hard exercise, but you do want to stay active. How often should you do it? Let's see, I lost my slides again. All right, so 1 to 2 times a week, is probably plenty. But again, it really depends on what you're thinking. And practicing this actually works really well. The more we practice, the better we get. Should you take your vitamins on fast days? Well, if you don't tolerate them on an empty stomach, then yeah, skip them. But if you do tolerate them, then it's absolutely fine to take them. Reality is nobody gets vitamin deficient in a couple of days. That's a long-term issue, not a short-term issue. And then the kind of final question, who really shouldn't fast? People that are under high stress, people that are overtraining, okay? If you're chronically poor sleep, if you're on the what I'll call the standard American diet, other people, if you're already underweight, pregnant women should not fast, breastfeeding women probably should not fast, children, if they're still growing, should not fast. So this really isn't for everyone, but it can be helpful and potentially healthful. So what are some advantages? I like to throw these out. Advantages to intermittent fasting. Literally anybody can do it. It's available immediately to anyone. All you have to do is skip a meal. So anybody can do it. It's simple and it will work. There's truly no skill involved at all. It will work. No skill involved. You just have to not eat. So I'm telling you to not. It's not like you have to practice to do something. You're actually practicing to not do something. It's absolutely free. And literally it'll save you money. You don't have to purchase anything. It's like, no, drink your water. Okay. Maybe have a bouillon or some bone broth or something along those lines. But it basically costs nothing. So anybody can do it. So it's convenient. You can do it anywhere, anytime. It's flexible that same way. You can do it anywhere, anytime. There aren't any rules or anything like that. So it's like, there's not something I can't eat. So I don't have to remember anything. And literally, you could add this to any diet. So if you're doing a low-fat diet, if you're doing a low-carb diet, if you're doing a Mediterranean diet, whatever diet, this can be added to any diet. So the power there is unlimited. Literally, you decide. And you can keep going. I mean, the world record is 382 days. I'm not recommending you do that. Okay? But literally, you decide. The power is all in your hands. So it is something that anybody can do. It costs nothing, actually saves you money. It saves you time, saves you work. You don't have to go shopping. You don't have to prepare meals. You're done. You have more free time. So anybody can do it. So if you're considering fasting, I'm going to give you some top tips for intermittent fasting. I'm sorry, the slides just won't stay up there. My suspicion is that this recording didn't work very well. But anyway. Top tips for intermittent fasting. 1, drink lots of water. Really push the water. You want to stay busy. So the last thing you want to do is just sitting around doing nothing, because all you'll do is dwell on eating. Ride out the hunger waves. Hunger typically comes in waves. It doesn't last that long. Typically, if we miss a meal, we'll be hungry when that time comes around, but usually it goes away. So ride out the hunger waves. Distract yourself, go do something. Don't tell anybody who is not supportive that you're fasting, because they'll just ridicule you and they'll kind of taunt you and things like this. And you also want to try to avoid high stress times. So you want to pick your timing well. What's a good time for you? What days I'm going to be busy, but I'm not going to, I don't have this big project that's due that I'm going to be stressed about. Give yourself some time. And what I'd recommend do is practice. Start doing it. Pick a time and just start doing it. Try it. Really push the water. So you broke down and you ate something. Who cares? So you broke your fast. So what? There's no law against it or anything like that. It's just like, okay, just say you skipped a meal. You're okay. Right. Give yourself some time to actually work on it, but practice doing it. You should try to follow a low carbohydrate diet between fasting periods. It makes it a lot easier. Hunger is a lot easier to control. And you want to break your fast gently, meaning that when you break the fast, you don't want to then have this huge meal and overeat. You want to break it gently, just have a normal. So just as an example, say you're doing a full 24 hours, and I began doing this a year and a half ago or so. It happened to be Wednesdays, but on Tuesday evening, I quit eating, and I don't eat anything till Thursday morning. I thought about, gee, should I just do 24 hours? And the issue there is that 24 hours is typically in the evening of the next day, and that's usually when we're most hungry. And when I realized that if I can get through those couple of hours, typically when you wake up, most people aren't starving when they wake up. They're generally not hungry, very hungry at all. So it was relatively easy to break the fast by actually extending the fast to the next morning, where I typically wasn't very hungry and I could just have a protein shake or something along those lines. So break the fast gently. You want to fit fasting into your own life. Don't try to fit your life into fasting. So you don't necessarily need to change everything in your life to fit your fasting schedule. Okay, change your fasting schedule to fit your life. So that if there are certain days that, hey, this isn't going to work for me, or certain weeks that, hey, normally I do it on this day, but I'm going to do it on a different day. It's like because of I have something stressed, or I have a big celebration going on. It's like, okay, then, don't make that, if the wedding's coming up or your reunion's coming up or anything like that, and gee, I'm not going to do it because I'm fasting that day. It's like, no, you want to enjoy the life of the whole thing. And then you could do the fasting different days. So just some tips there. So I'll wind this all down. I know I kind of ran way over. Okay. But fasting for health, kind of a little comment by Mark Twain, famous writer, century and a half ago. A little starvation can really do more for the average sick man than can the best medicines and the best doctors. Something to think about. Question. I see no questions out there, but if you have questions, don't hesitate to give us a yell here at the Center for Weight Loss Success. Stop by, get your body comp done. I won't harp on that tonight. Watch your emails for the invite and link for the next one. And remember, make it a health one, everyone.